team is we're building a CRM for the messaging era. We noticed that the current CRM solutions don't fit with this new paradigm that is more real-time but at the same time asynchronous. And we saw that a lot of us were taking advantage of WhatsApp. A lot of it is happening there, but big companies weren't doing that yet. So we built a platform that allows them to do marketing, customer service, and it's all AI powered and it connects with their backend. So a couple of things that helped us was WhatsApp as a platform, and it was designed from the start. We thought, what would be the things that would allow us to see Latin American basis, but on an emerging markets basis. So we sought a platform that would be all across emerging markets, and one of them was WhatsApp. So you have it in Latin America, you have it in India, you have it in Southeast Asia, and people understand it really well. Another one was doing B2B. So in your case, you were doing B2C, but for us, the same solution that we're doing for Coca-Cola across Latin America applies in India, applies in Thailand. So these same international companies have taken us, starting in Mexico, like the case of Coca-Cola, we started with them there, and then we are now doing it in Brazil, also the same case. We're doing that across Central America, and we're starting with India and Thailand through them. So it already pushes you into the other countries by using that, and I think that's something that Gympass, for example, has taken advantage of, in terms of starting with a big multinational in one country and then using that company to scale to the other countries and having a platform that everyone understands there. So for us, that was something that we were conscious about designing, but then we did things of really understanding what was it that companies needed. So we actually spent around 3 years tweaking and iterating on the idea just in Mexico before we went to other countries.
When do you have read the MVP?
So the MVP, we have multiple MVPs. I would say product market fit, we found it in 2018. And from there, it has been a very rapid growth, but we waited until that in order to start expanding after. And once we were ready, we raised the capital. So far we raised around $10 million. And also another thing that in emerging markets helps is having companies pay you, and even better if they pay you upfront, because that reduces your dependency on external capital, and you can fund your growth just with customer funding.
Who's funding you? Do you have funds, VC?
Yes, so initially ideas from Tony supported us, and now we have Sierra Ventures as our main backer.
So, tell us your story.
Well, thank you, Alberto.
That's all right.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Pablo. I'm co-founder of Allright. Thank you, Alberto, and the organizers, Dean and Andreas, for the invitation. Allright is a shared mobility platform that is digitalizing the collective massive transportation systems that are already in place, but still not digitalized. So we're making it in order to make a safer and a more enjoyable experience for everybody, so people can choose collective transportation instead of the individual use of car. That is the cause of the massive transportation crisis we live around the world. So, talking about expansion across Latin America, I cannot still talk about exit, not by now. But about expansion, in my experience, I can share 3 experiences. So that is important to focus. Well, first is really focus on a real pain that people have. The second is, as Tony said in the previous panel, take care about the cost, and of course have a good team. So, and we, in our experience about the first lesson about pain, we really realized that the problem we are trying to solve about collective transportation is a huge pain. Well, the individual use of vehicles, there's a lot of talks about, so people talk about autonomous cars or flying taxis or whatever, but it doesn't matter how much space or more the space you give to individual use of vehicles, more traffic you will get. Doesn't matter if it's in the road or in the air. So we're really trying to make well, humans we always take the cheapest and the easiest option, isn't it? So we are trying to make the collective transportation that option and we realize that there's a huge pain in Mexico and in other countries in the region.
In how many cities are you in which country?
We are currently operating in Chile, in Peru, Mexico. We are starting in Costa Rica, and now we have a partner in Spain. So
where did you start?
We start in Chile, then we expand thanks to a fund led by Tim Draper, and well, we realized that the same pain was happening everywhere. So. Just to give an example, if you go here outside of this hotel, and you can ask people where comes the truck or the bus, nobody can tell you. So in Mexican, where is coming the pinche camión? Yeah? So and this is can seem just something for planning your ride, but it's also at the end a security question. Especially for women or people that rides to work or commutes early in the morning or in the night. So really focus on a problem that people suffer every day. So this is the first, the real pain. And after talking about the take care of cost, a formula that works for us very well is because we are still just a 6-person team. We are just 6. Yeah? So we with local partners. So we have our development team in Chile, but we have local partners that sell our solution B2B, even B2C, in each local market. So and there I arrived to the last point. To have partners is key to focus on the real pain and to have your cost in a level that you can still grow.
Sell the solution to who? To whom?
Well, we have 3 verticals. Well, just to explain what we do in concrete words, in our platform you have carpool, you have parking optimization, you can have digitalization of corporate buses and public transportation buses, so you can see the routes, the stops, and the real-time location and capacity of the buses, both in corporate buses and public transport, and the school buses. So you can be, if you are a parent, you can have less worry where your child is going to home. So schools, public transportation, corporate buses, carpool, parking optimization. So our customers are first hand, it's a marketplace, B2C. So we charge a fee for each transaction. Then we sell as a SaaS, the software as a service, to the big companies as Heineken, FEMSA, etc. And the last is, and the most important is, as we are digitalizing the entire environment, we generate data that is important to banks and to telcos.
So, what would you say is the biggest challenge to grow in the region right now? Has it changed anyhow in the last years? Because usually it was regulation, the different regulation, the politics was usually is important. Has it changed in a sense? In any sense, technology has changed the environment.
I think definitely, and the answer would be biggest challenge is understanding. So right questions would lead to better answers, and I think it's about us rethinking how we want to expand and what markets we want to focus on. There are certain characteristics that are shared across the board in Latin America or emerging markets in general, and there are certain characteristics that are not. If you're designing a product that is geared towards the US market eventually, that's a different thing than designing for emerging markets. So kind of around our thinking and around how we want to operate, that kind of leads to what you want to do. And for example, what I've seen is that a big advantage, you can call it an advantage, it's a reality. The wealth gap in Latin America, it's a case, and it's a real case, and the same happens in India, happens across emerging markets. So what sort of products operate better when that exists. And one of the examples of that is everything that has to do with micromobility. Servicing scooters, for example, is a lot cheaper to do in Latin America, or food delivery, than it would be to do it in the US. So you kind of identify those markets that would give you better unit economics, and just thinking in a different way. So at least what I've seen is, and I feel that we've been tilted too much towards just in the US as the market to go or to sell to, which in certain cases is very saturated. And for the rest of Latin America or for the rest of emerging markets, there are really wide open spaces for you.
But you agree with Jolene that the J curve in Latin America is exceptionally challenging?
Depends on what you focus on. I would say for a consumer, very specific niche, yes, every country is different. What we've seen in the B2B space, that
expand to other countries in Latin America, and they have failed because I think that the mindset is just like thinking that the Brazilian model would work in other parts, and also from the Mexican side to work in the same way as in Brazil. It's just like completely different. For example, in the dentist area, the dentists in Brazil, they are not only selling like dentist stuff, they are selling botox. But it's much more aesthetic side, and just understanding that and knowing that the focus that you in our business in Brazil is completely different than in Mexico, and yeah, like that's like one of the things that you have to take into account to really America as you should.
There's something I have to say about focus. Your focus in your company, because Ulises asked him for his solution for his company, and what did you say? No.
Because we are a startup and they are very focused on, like big companies.
Big companies. There's also something important, no? You have to focus on your solution. So, you said the differences between countries. What was your biggest challenge in moving from country to country? Do you have to change? Do you have to tweak your solution?
Well, by now we are just in a Spanish-speaking country, so there's not so much need, and the needs are very similar. The most challenging was to find the correct partners. As we are operating by franchise, you really need to trust in the other side, and knowing that he's not only capable, but he have the trust, the spirit, and the ambition in
That's
a good
challenging.
sense. Yeah.
We have bad reputation.
Well, I will not. We have found very nice partners that are very ethic, and they have the ambition to grow. And this is very important, as the challenge we face, especially in mobility sector, is huge. So. But we are having success as well. We have big customers, and we have deals with banks that also want to digitalize the ecosystem, so it's easier to arrive to a broader or to the bulk of population. Yeah.
Jolene, I know you work for the San Francisco Mayor's office, but also I know also that people come to you for anything they need in Latin America. Tell us, what are the biggest challenges you find in the startups that come to you? Basically tech companies.
The startups, I think that there's a little bit of a misconception on where to enter first, right? Sometimes you have a startup that is Colombian and they come to Latin SF and they say, well, how do I enter Mexico? Or should I enter Mexico right now? So it really depends on the product, and it depends on what kind of team you have. So one of the things we were talking about earlier too is, do you have a team that already has a network in each country that you want to grow to? So if you're not ready for Colombia, do you want to hire someone from a similar company that knows and already has a network, which is going to guarantee your success? And I think in speaking about, you know, is it easier now or are the challenges the same? I think it's definitely easier now because there's so many companies that have expanded regionally and have proven and created those networks, you know, from Mercado Libre in the early days to most recently Rappi and Corner Shop, which is a great success story of founders that, you know, previous to Groupon were able to tap into those networks and then really grow exponentially in the region. But more specifically to the startup question is it really depends on the startup, it depends on the product, and it depends on who your competitors are in specific countries. So.
Because there's a challenge in Latin America. Every country has different competitive framework, so it's challenging too.
And everyone's talent executes differently. You've got very strong creative talent in Argentina. You have much more stronger drive in Uruguay. The culture of work there is very strong culture of work, but also culture of family. I find that in different Latin American countries, there's different culture of execution. Mexico's, for example, and I think that there's so much talent here, but I think that things are much slower at closing. I think people wrap around, you know, the idea or they beat around the bush until it's finally a yes or no. I find that in different Latin American countries, particularly Colombia, closing is much quicker. You can acquire clients and move forward faster.
The problem with the no in Mexico, no? That we have a problem saying no.
Like el hueveo.
Well, Jara is different, is a little bit.
Yes, there are certain similarities and there are certain differences depending on how you ask the question. And coming back to the J curve, I think one of the things that you typically hear, and it's around double clicking on that, is curve and grow like crazy. And sometimes we're talking with the team and they're like, yeah, so this will make us grow like crazy. And I'm like, no, you know, not like crazy, like grow in a healthy way. And I think it's a misconception because sometimes the threshold of control in your company, it is believed that you need to completely let go of it and just, we don't even understand what we're doing or where is growth coming from. And that is kind of like pushed towards it. And it should never be in that way. And when you double click and you start talking with companies that have had huge growth, we had the chance of getting really close with WhatsApp, for example. And hearing their story of growth, it was a story of incredible focus, incredible saying no, and they actually tell you grow slow. Make sure you have all the fundamentals in the right places and you're making all the right decisions, and naturally that will lead towards that. So I believe general misconception of how the growth should behave and how to get to J curves by just doing everything.
Is it sometimes better to focus on one market instead of thinking of expansion?
In my opinion, I think it depends on your product.
For example, you focused on one market, which is multinational companies, in one platform.
On one segment,
yeah,
yes.
One segment.
For us, it was enterprises that have more than 1 million customers, and we map and we have them named.
I don't care about geography.
We don't do anything else on that. It's like there's a great opportunity. No, right?
Yeah. Also, it's kind of how your product behave, but I think that the main the way is just to focus on having a minimum viable product, then get to product market fit, then start to grow, and then to really make procedures on all your company areas, so you are really sure that the things are doing it the right way. Especially the other side that it's a medical thing. Like we have to work. The last 3 months we have been working a lot in all the processes of every part of the company, because we need to assure that all the medical procedures are done in the right way. And with the growth that we have been experiencing, it's kind of challenging to really stop a little bit and then be assured that everything is well done and then continue growing. So
you impress me. You're in how many cities already?
In 23 in Brazil and 12 in Mexico.
In 1 year.
In 1 year, yeah. It's kind of crazy, but it's you have to do a lot of processes, of procedures that are very well managed. So to be really assured that the things are doing in the right way.
And there are certain things, I don't know if that worked for you, Ulises, but for example, for us, we made the decision of running everything in English for the company. So all of our Slack, all of our internal documentation from the start has been in English. So when we expanded to India, it was simple to do. You didn't need to translate everything and all the conversations. So English is a requirement to join the company because we're thinking that that's the language that we need to use.
Last question, exits. Do you feel comfortable with the situation right now? It has improved? When I started in business journalism in Latin America, all the environment for entrepreneurship was completely doomed because there was no way to exit anything.
Well, I think now we are seeing a lot of crises in the region and worldwide, and I think this is an ideal environment for innovation and for new business as people are searching for alternatives. And this crisis also happened because you have not homogeneous improvement in some conditions. By example, here in Mexico you have almost 90% of people using mobile, but transportation or banking is not digitalized at all, or in some scale. And you have a wealth that is growing in different countries, but it's not balanced. So when you have a crisis, I think for entrepreneurs like us and for investors, it's the ideal moment to take a risk because people are searching for alternatives. So I think that this situation we are living in right now is the perfect moment to go on and make innovation and give alternatives to people and make the change they need.
I agree, I basically agree. But do you think...
To add to that, yes, the short answer is definitely there's appetite for that, and as more knowledge about the region comes aboard and as more companies expand and start diversifying beyond just one country, there's a lot of appetite on that side. And we have the opportunity of working in India, for example. Things are very complex. Like, there are so many things happening there that funds are starting to realize that is happening. So there's an appetite for that, and there's an appetite for acquisitions of what is the next growth path for Salesforce, for example. And if you already have all of those companies in Latin America, that becomes a great acquisition.
I think, from a marketing and global perspective of just understanding the investment, I think this is really key, especially to valuations for exits. This past year, roughly about $2 billion went to Latin America. Roughly double, a little bit more than double, went to Southeast Asia. The same amount of unicorns were produced in both regions. So we still need to really market the region and get our valuations to become higher so that we can have more successful exits. And that, in turn, will also attract more capital because the VCs will be happier about that ROI. But we still have that problem of Latin America being an underdeveloped nation or an emerging market and thus not getting the valuations that we really deserve, in my opinion.
Yeah, actually, I think that a lot of the, the culture of doing entrepreneurship in Latin America also, it's like thinking on selling my company. And actually, that's not really the real success of it. Like in my experience with, I was like the first guy in Mexico in Mercado Libre's team, and I developed Mercado Libre for 5 years there. And it's just like thinking on making a bigger platform and doing an IPO that you could do that in NASDAQ. It's just like a different way to really tapping and harvesting all the effort that you do as an entrepreneur to do stuff. So right now we're thinking on the whole dental industry is completely archaic. You can do every type of disruption there. It's just like in America, it's completely different. You have to focus in one thing and make it happen. Like eBay in the States, it was like just one thing. Mercado Libre in the other side has to think on, okay, we're doing auctions, but now we have to do like direct sales. Now we have to solve our escrow payment system, so we create Mercado Pago, and we have to do an affiliate marketing program, and we created Mercado Socios, and then stores, because there's no Yahoo stores or whatever, so we create Mercado Shops, and that's something that the startups in Latin America have to start thinking, is like we're solving one thing, but in the middle we have to solve tons of others that allow us to make a much bigger company and doing bigger valuations in that side. So for example, fintech, there's in every market, I think there's a problem with financial stuff. So in our side, just the clients are always asking for credit.
Yeah.
And if we have that story, I mean, like we can develop in that side, bringing credit not only for our clients, but all the dental clients. So that's like a huge market over there. So
yeah, and if you can have different products, but if they make synergy between them, you can really be more competitive as well. And by example, in China, you have this platform that made everything. So it's maybe kind of similar if your product makes synergy between them.
We have to end this panel, yes, sorry. So, thank you for that.
thank you all for listening.
So, I know we're out of time, but I did want to open it up. If anybody has a question for our panelists, we can take one question before we go into break. If there is anything out there, please raise your hand. Well, I guess we covered it well. Thank you very much to the panelists. I have a little bit of an announcement to make. One of our sponsors is AWS, Francisco over there, and they've been coming for many years, and this year they didn't come in empty-handed. Besides sponsoring a dinner, they are also raffling off 3 Alexas, and you should all now have an announcement in the Hoover app about how to sign up for that raffle. There's a QR code, and you can sign up for the raffle. It will be raffled off today. So we need your participation, or would like your participation before 3 o'clock, is my understanding, which is when it's going to be raffled off. So thank you AWS for that. And with that, I'll send it to a short break, and then we reconvene for keynote speaker Howard. Thank you.